over administrative procedures, missing vendor deposits, and an unfathomable twist of cruel betrayal. It all started on a Thursday evening while I was standing in my kitchen. When my phone rang, my sister's voice dripped with that sickeningly sweet syrup she only uses when she's trying to squeeze a favor out of me. But this time, she wasn't asking for anything. She was gloating. "Orch. I'm getting married tomorrow, Emmy. Isn't that exciting? Oh, by the way, I emptied out your bank account. The whole $92,000. Just consider it your wedding gift to me. Thanks so much, bye." Before I could even process what she said, the line went dead. I stood in my kitchen, with the phone pressed to my ear, listening to nothing but total silence where my sister's voice used to be. Orch. $92,000. 5 years of careful budgeting, every single end-of-year bonus, every tax refund, and every single dollar I refused to spend on vacations, new clothes, or anything remotely unnecessary. Just like that, completely gone. And do you know what I did? I laughed. It wasn't a bitter laugh or a hysterical breakdown. It was a genuine laugh born out of pure shock. Orch. The sound echoed off the kitchen walls, because Linda had just made the biggest mistake of her entire life. She thought she was being clever. She assumed I would fall apart, cry, and maybe get on my knees to beg for my money back. She thought I'd do what I've done for the last 35 years. Swallow the bitter pill, take the hit, and move on. But Linda didn't know one critical detail. Orch. She had no idea that her $45,000 dream wedding, every single vendor, every flower, and every archway, was about to crumble into dust within minutes, and I was the only person on earth who could stop it. My name is Emily Carter, and I'm 35 years old. I used to think I knew my family inside and out. I'm a senior financial analyst at an investment firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. Orch. I'm the kind of woman who audits her bank statements every Sunday morning and uses Excel sheets to rigorously track savings goals. I live alone in a modest uptown apartment, drive a reliable commuter car, and my only somewhat expensive habit is good coffee. Every single penny outside of that was saved. Every cent went toward my dream of buying my very first house. Orch. 6 months ago, a cozy craftsman bungalow in Dilworth caught my eye. 3 bedrooms, a front porch, and a backyard big enough for a small garden. The listing price was $320,000, and I had finally, at long last, saved up a respectable down payment. $92,047. To be exact, that number is burned into my brain. Orch. I stared at my mobile banking app as the numbers on the screen coldly confirmed what Linda had just casually announced. Savings balance $47.23. There were 3 separate withdrawals over the past week, $30,000, $35,000, and $27,000. Every dime had been transferred to an account belonging to Linda M. Carter. Orch. I carefully set my phone down, moving so slowly as if a sudden motion might make it burst into flames. My hands weren't shaking, which genuinely surprised me. I figured they'd be trembling out of control. Instead, a cold, laser-focused clarity settled over me. It was the exact state of mind I enter whenever I analyze complex financial statements. Assess, analyze, act. Orch. That's my professional training, and it's what I do best. As for how she managed to pull it off, the scattered pieces of memory began fitting together in my head. 3 years ago, Linda called me crying hysterically. "Lily's in the hospital, Emmy, she has a skyrocketing fever. They're running tests, and I'm terrified." Orch. My bank account is locked due to some security issue, and I can't pull any money out. Can you add me as an authorized user on your account? Just temporarily, just so I can clear the hospital bill. I didn't hesitate for a single second. Lily is my niece, only 7 years old at the time, and I would walk through fire for that little girl. Orch. That very night, I logged into my online banking and added Linda as an authorized user on my savings account. That emergency access was supposed to be strictly temporary, but that so-called emergency turned out to be nothing more than a minor fever that cleared up with a bit of children's Tylenol. Orch. Lily was discharged that same afternoon, and Linda never once bothered to remove herself from my account privileges. And I never thought to check. I never thought to manually revoke her access because she was my sister. Because family is supposed to trust family. And because, as Linda once texted a friend, I was an easy target. 6 months ago, at Lily's birthday party, I borrowed Linda's phone to take a quick photo of my niece and caught sight of that text message by complete accident. A notification popped up on the screen from someone named Megan. "So, did you get the money from her?" Like an idiot, I scrolled up through the chat. My sister is such an easy target. She always feels guilty for being more successful than me. She thinks being a good sister means being a doormat everyone can step on. I put the phone down, took the picture, went home, and quietly removed Linda from my everyday checking account. But I completely forgot about the savings account holding my $92,000. One account, one oversight. That was all it took to tear everything down. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my mom. "Your sister is so excited for the wedding tomorrow, Emily. Don't you dare do anything to ruin her mood. After everything she's been through, she deserves happiness." I stared at the screen. No hello? No, how are you? Not a single shred of acknowledgement that I'm a human being with my own life outside of playing a side character in Linda's story. It was just a command. Stay in your lane, don't cause trouble, be the good little sister, the responsible one, the one who is always reasonable. But Mom didn't know something, and neither did Linda. 6 months ago, when Linda got engaged to Jason Miller, she came to me with a request. She wanted a dream wedding at Magnolia Gardens with high-end catering, a live band, the whole package. Total budget, $45,000. The problem was, Linda didn't have a dime. Her credit cards were maxed out, she had zero savings, and she held a job she quit every 6 months. So she asked if I would act as the financial guarantor for her vendor contracts. "Please, Emmy, I'll pay you back with the cash gifts we get from the wedding. Jason's family has money. I just need someone to sign off on the contracts so the vendors will take my booking. You know how these things work." Against all my better judgment, I agreed. Every single vendor contract. The venue, catering, florist, photographer, DJ. Had my name signed as the guarantor. Every deposit and payment had to route through an account under my control. Linda put my name on every piece of paperwork, telling vendors I was her silent investor, a generous sister trying to make up for years of distant behavior. She built her entire wedding strictly on top of my signature, and now, she had stolen my entire life savings, convinced she had taken everything from me. But in reality, she had handed me the master switch to her own financial undoing. I ran the numbers quickly in my head. $92,000 stolen from me. A $45,000 wedding entirely dependent on my authorization. Without my sign-off, not a single vendor would move an inch. The venue wouldn't open its gates, the caterer wouldn't deliver food, and the florist wouldn't set up a single rose. I picked up my phone. Not to call Linda, not to beg, and not to demand answers. I opened my contacts and dialed the fraud department at First National Bank. It was 8:47 p.m. on Thursday. The wedding was scheduled for Saturday at 4 p.m. That meant I had about 40 hours. The automated voice system kept me on hold, transferred me, and put me on hold again. Finally, a real person answered. "First National Bank Fraud Department, how can I help you?" My voice sounded steady, restrained, almost gentle. "I need to report unauthorized transactions on my account, and I need an immediate freeze placed on all associated accounts, every single one." While waiting for the representative to process the request, I looked at a photo sitting on my desk. It was a picture of Linda and me with our arms around each other's shoulders, probably around 8 and 11 years old. Both of us were smiling, completely innocent, believing we'd always be on the same side. I turned the frame face down on the table. "I'm sorry, Linda, but you brought every bit of this on yourself." While waiting for the fraud department to process the request, Soft hold music played through my phone speaker. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, my coffee slowly turning cold beside me. The apartment felt different now, filled with a heavy tension I couldn't quite name. Porch. Outside, the Charlotte skyline glittered against the night sky as ordinary people went about their lives, completely unaware that my world had just spun off its axis. I found myself drifting back to a question I had asked 1,000 times. How on earth did we get here? When did my sister turn into someone capable of pulling a stunt like this? Porch. And when did I become the person who just let her get away with it? To make sense of it, you have to understand the Carter family dynamic. You have to understand how our home was built from the ground up. My father, Richard Carter, worked as an insurance claims adjuster. His life motto was, "Peace at all costs is better than conflict at any cost." He spent his whole career calculating losses and negotiating settlements, and he brought that exact same mindset home. Avoid arguments, smooth everything over, and if writing a check makes a problem go away, just sign it. My mother, Diane Carter, was a former pageant queen in her youth, the first runner-up for Miss North Carolina back in 1978. She never truly got over the fact that she didn't win the crown, so she poured all her unfinished ambitions directly into her eldest daughter. Linda was drop-dead gorgeous from the day she was born, with dark hair, striking green eyes, and a smile that could stop strangers dead in their tracks. I came along 3 years later, quieter, plain-looking, and far more interested in books than beauty pageants. Right from the start, we were cast in completely different roles in the family script. Linda was the star on stage, and I was the backstage crew moving props. That hierarchy was established early on and never wavered. Linda got the largest bedroom at the front of the house, complete with pink walls, a princess canopy bed, and a closet full of clothes. My bedroom was a converted study at the back of the house. Practical, small, and what Mom fondly called cozy. Linda's birthday parties were elaborate productions with themes, catering, and professional photographers. My birthdays were quiet family dinners featuring a cheap cake from the grocery store. Mom would always say, "Just be grateful for what you have." When I asked about the double standard once, Dad placed a hand on my shoulder and said, "Emily, you're so mature, you understand, right? We have to make choices. Linda needs a little extra support. You've always been the strong one." I learned what being the strong one really meant when I turned 10. Linda wanted to take expensive, competitive dance lessons that required custom costumes, frequent travel, and private coaching. I wanted piano lessons with Mrs. Patterson down the street for $20 a week. The family budget could only cover one. Dad sat me down, put that same hand on my shoulder, and gave me the same apologetic smile. "Emily, you understand, right? Linda has so much talent. This could be her future. You're so responsible. I know you'll find other ways to express yourself." I nodded. I always nodded. Linda got her dance lessons, and I got nothing. I learned a quiet lesson that day. Being the responsible child meant being completely ignored. By the summer I turned 16, a conversation I overheard sealed my place in the family forever. Mom was on the phone in the kitchen with Aunt Patricia, and I froze in the hallway, unable to move. "Emily's fine," Mom said, her tone carrying that familiar dismissal. "She's the strong one. Linda is sensitive. She needs a lot more holding up." Standing in that hallway, I realized for the first time that being strong didn't mean being admired. It meant she can handle being cast aside. It meant we don't need to worry about her. It meant being completely invisible. Linda's life followed a very predictable pattern. In high school, she was homecoming queen, dated the star quarterback, and got featured in the local paper for charity work, which really meant spending one afternoon at a soup kitchen, accompanied by a professional photographer. Meanwhile, I was on the honor roll, captain of the debate team, and working part-time at a bookstore to save up for college. At my high school graduation dinner, Mom spent the entire night talking about Linda's new boyfriend. When Linda was 19, she wrecked her car driving home after a party. Thank goodness no one was hurt, but the car was completely totaled. Less than a month later, Dad bought her a brand new vehicle. She learned her lesson, he insisted. Orch. Meanwhile, 16-year-old me was still taking the bus every day to work at the bookstore. When Linda dropped out of college after 2 semesters because it wasn't for her, my parents nodded with deep sympathy and welcomed her right back home. When I graduated with top honors and a finance degree on a full scholarship from UNC Charlotte, Mom asked if I could help pay off Linda's credit card debt. Orch. Linda got married for the first time when she was 28. His name was Marcus Webb, a genuinely good guy with a stable IT job and a mild-mannered personality. He absolutely doted on her. They met at a party, got engaged 4 months later, and married within 8. I was a bridesmaid. When the wedding budget ran over by $15,000, I covered the difference out of my own pocket. Orch. It's for family, I told myself. That's what family does. That marriage lasted 3 short years. By the end, Marcus looked like a man who had been completely drained from the inside out. Orch. 6 months after the wedding, Linda quit her job to become a full-time homemaker, which, in her book, meant endless shopping sprees, spa days, and what she called retail therapy. Marcus's credit cards were maxed out one after another. When their daughter Lily was born, I hoped motherhood would ground my sister. Instead, Linda hired a nanny and kept right on spending. Orch. After discovering Linda had hidden $40,000 in credit card debt from him, Marcus filed for divorce. But Linda moved faster. She fabricated a story about financial abuse, painting Marcus as a controlling husband who hid assets and monitored her every move. The family believed her. They always believed her. I paid for Linda's divorce lawyer. Orch. When she moved out, I paid the security deposit on her new apartment. When Linda claimed money was tight, I bought Lily's clothes and school supplies. Over 2 years, it added up to around $25,000. She's my sister, I kept telling myself. She's Lily's mother. What choice do I have? Orch. Then came that fake emergency 3 years ago, when Linda called crying about Lily's fever and tricked me into granting her access to my savings account. I trusted her because she was my sister. Orch. I only found out later that she had been making small, routine withdrawals from that account. Amounts small enough to fly under my radar. $200 here, $400 there, always just below the threshold that triggers a bank alert. Over 3 years, it's totaled nearly $3,500. I noticed it, but I said nothing. Exposing a family member's lies felt far more painful than losing the money. Orch. I didn't want to seem petty, because despite everything, I was still the strong one. Until 6 months ago when I saw that text message on her phone. Easy target. Doormat. Easy to take advantage of. That night, I removed her from my checking account. But that savings account holding $92,000? I forgot. One oversight, one unfinished task. Orch. That was all my sister needed to steal my entire future. The hold music suddenly stopped. Miss Carter, thank you for your patience. I sat up straight in my chair. Yes, I'm here. As requested, the savings account has been frozen. The associated vendor payment account is also locked pending a formal investigation. Orch. I expected to feel a wave of relief, but all I felt was a cold, sharp readiness for war. All automated payments scheduled over the next 72 hours have been suspended. The bank representative then added a detail that made my blood run cold. Miss Carter, there's one more thing you should know. While reviewing the transaction patterns for this fraud report, we noticed an anomaly. Orch. The very first withdrawal from your account occurred exactly 1 week ago. That happens to be the exact same day your sister was added as an authorized user on a joint account with a Mr. Jason Miller. It appears she accessed your account the very same day she gained access to his. I sat in absolute silence. She hadn't just taken my money. She was taking her fiancé's money too. Orch. And nobody else in the world knew about it except me. I didn't sleep a wink that night. By Friday morning, I had been awake for nearly 24 hours, running entirely on black coffee and something far sharper than caffeine. A mix of sheer determination and a long-repressed rage finally given permission to exist. Porch. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, notes scattered across every available surface, and the screen glowing with fraud confirmation emails from the bank. Outside, Charlotte was waking up like any normal Friday morning. People were commuting, grabbing coffee, and going about their routines. To them, nothing had changed. To me, everything was different. Porch. The clock on my laptop read 6 a.m. The wedding was scheduled for 4 p.m. tomorrow. That meant I had roughly 32 hours to decide who I was going to be. Was I going to be the forgiving sister who quietly took the blow, took the loss, and kept the peace at all costs? Or was I going to be the woman who, after 35 years of being pushed around, finally decided to push back? Porch. I picked up my phone and dialed Rachel Chen. Rachel and I had been best friends since our freshman year of college when we were roommates. She's now a senior corporate attorney at a top firm in Charlotte. The kind of woman who wears suit jackets like armor and can dismantle an argument with surgical precision. She was also the only person in my life who had never liked Linda. Porch. She's a leech, Rachel told me years ago. I don't know why you refused to see it. Back then, I didn't want to see it. Now, I saw it crystal clear. The phone rang twice before a sleepless voice answered. Emmy, it's 7 a.m. on my day off. Someone better be dead. I almost laughed. Nobody's dead, but if you don't help me, I might end up committing a crime. Porch. There was a brief pause, and then Rachel's voice snapped awake, sharp as a tack. Talk to me. I'm listening. I laid out the entire story. Linda's phone call. The stolen $92,000. The frozen accounts. The wedding built entirely on my financial authorization. And the detail from the bank showing Linda had accessed Jason's account the exact same day she took my money. Porch. When I finished, a long silence stretched over the line. She did what? Rachel asked, her tone flat with sheer disbelief. It gets worse, I said. I think she's taking money from her fiancé, too. Another 3 seconds of total silence passed before Rachel spoke again. I'm coming over right now. Don't touch a single thing until I get there. And for heaven's sake, brew more coffee. Porch. By 8:30 a.m., Rachel was at my door looking perfectly put together despite the early hour. She carried a briefcase and a legal notepad, her eyes already scanning the papers on my table before she even sat down. All right, she said, taking a seat like a commander setting up a tactical board. Walk me through everything from the top. Don't leave out a single detail. I walked her through it all. Porch. Every document, every transaction record, every detail I had spent countless sleepless nights dissecting. Rachel didn't interrupt. She just took notes in her clean, precise handwriting. As the full truth came to light, her expression grew increasingly stern. When I finished, she set her pen down and looked at me. Porch. Being an authorized user doesn't mean having authorization to drain an account dry, she stated. She had access, but she absolutely did not have permission to take $92,000. That is theft. Given the amount, it's a major felony offense. And if she misrepresented anything to get those funds, it crosses right into fraud. What about the wedding? I asked. The vendors? Porch. Rachel pulled my vendor contracts toward her, scanning each page with practiced legal efficiency. You signed as the guarantor on every single one of these. You're not just a payer, you're an active party to the contract. Her eyes locked onto mine. Without your explicit authorization, these vendors cannot legally move forward. You have every legal right to issue a complete stop payment order. Porch. Those words felt like a suit of armor being placed around me. I had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed by an attorney made it ironclad. Linda had built her dream wedding on my signature, and with a few phone calls, I had the power to tear it all down. Rachel, I said quietly, if I freeze everything, the wedding collapses completely. My family is going to blame me for all of it. Porch. Rachel's expression softened just a fraction. They were going to blame you anyway, they always do. So let's make sure that when they come after you, you're completely protected. We spent the next hour putting together a clear plan. Step 1. Confirm that all vendor contracts were strictly under my name. Step 2. Issue formal stop payment orders to every single vendor. Step 3. Document everything to prepare for any potential legal fallout. Step 4. Decide whether to reach out to Jason. That last part was the hardest. He's about to marry someone who is actively taking money from him, Rachel noted. Doesn't he deserve to know the truth? I hesitated. I haven't even met the guy. For all I know, he could be in on it, or maybe he already knows. Rachel shook her head. Or maybe he's just another victim exactly like you. My mind drifted to Marcus, Linda's first husband. The man she painted as a controlling nightmare when the exact opposite was true. He had been completely in the dark, too. By the time he realized what was happening, his credit was ruined, his reputation was trashed, and his visitation rights with Lily were reduced to weekends. If someone had warned him back then, things might have turned out differently. I'm freezing the wedding, I said, making up my mind. If Jason reaches out to me, I'll tell him the whole truth. But I'm not going to chase him down right now. I have enough fire to put out. Rachel nodded. Fair enough. At 9 a.m. the vendor calls began. First was Magnolia Gardens, the wedding venue. A coordinator answered on the second ring. Good morning, this is Patricia. How can I help you? I took a deep breath. This is Emily Carter. I'm the guarantor for the Carter-Miller wedding tomorrow. I need to verify our payment status and review the terms of the contract. Patricia's tone instantly turned warm and bubbly. Oh, of course, Miss Carter. Your sister speaks so highly of you. She keeps telling us how amazingly generous you are. My stomach churned. Is that so? What exactly did she say? Well, Patricia continued brightly, she calls you her silent investor. She mentioned that because you felt guilty for not supporting her enough during her divorce, you insisted on paying for the wedding as a way to make it up to her. I closed my eyes as the full weight of Linda's lie washed over me. She hadn't just stolen my money, she had carefully crafted a narrative to justify the theft. In her version of reality, I was the guilt-ridden, absent sister trying to buy forgiveness. She turned me into an accomplice in my own financial robbery. That is inaccurate, I said, keeping my voice entirely level. I am issuing an immediate stop payment order on the remaining balance. Please do not proceed with any venue setup unless you receive direct instruction from me. A long pause followed on the line. Miss Carter, the wedding is tomorrow. I am well aware. The exact same scenario played out with every single phone call that followed. Belmont Catering had a $15,000 contract with $7,000 still outstanding. Your sister said you volunteered to cover the bill because you couldn't make it to the wedding in person, the manager explained. She said you were tied up with work but still wanted to contribute. I had never said any such thing. I issued a stop payment order. Flourish Florals was a $4,500 booking. Your sister was just so grateful to you, the florist shared. She mentioned how wonderful it was that you two finally reconciled after years of not speaking. We had never stopped speaking, so there was nothing to reconcile. At least, not in any reality Linda was willing to admit. I froze the remaining $2,500. By noon, I had contacted every vendor on the list. The DJ, the photographer, hair and makeup, and the transportation fleet. Every single one had been fed a completely different story, explaining why Emily Carter was so eagerly footing the bill for her sister's big day. In one version, I was making up for missing Linda's first wedding. In another, I was the wealthy finance executive sister who wanted to spoil her like a princess. In yet another, I was the family's unspoken wedding planner who insisted on handling all the details. Not a single story was true. But together, they painted a crystal clear picture. Linda had constructed a total fantasy world where she was the beloved bride and I was the eager sidekick desperate for her approval. She took my reputation for being responsible and turned it into a weapon against me. Rachel consolidated the notes from every single call. She didn't just take your funds, Rachel said quietly. She targeted your character. She set it up so you'd look like the bad guy in this story, when in reality you're the sole victim. Orch. I stared at the long list of vendors, the staggering dollar amounts, and the intricate web of lies my sister had spun. This is how she's operated her entire life, I said, making herself the main character in every single narrative. Rachel set her jaw. Well, as of right now, the show is over. By 4 p.m., formal written notices were delivered to all vendors. Orch. Magnolia Gardens would keep its gates locked. Belmont Catering would deliver zero food. Flourish Florals wouldn't set up a single stem. The DJ wouldn't play a single song, and the photographer wouldn't take a single photo. Tomorrow, 150 guests were going to show up dressed in their finest attire, only to find a completely empty venue. Orch. Linda's $45,000 dream wedding was now entirely frozen in ice, and she didn't have the slightest clue. Rachel ordered takeout and practically forced me to eat something. You did the right thing, she assured me. I chewed quietly, tasting nothing. Then why do I feel like I just set off an explosive? Because you did, Rachel replied. But she's the one who built the device. Orch. You just pulled the pin. My phone remained completely silent all day long. No calls from Linda, no texts from my parents. Linda likely assumed I was hiding in a corner somewhere crying my eyes out, completely crushed by her betrayal and too weak to fight back. She was about to find out just how wrong she was. At 8:47 p.m., my phone finally lit up. The screen flashed with Linda. Orch. Rachel and I stared at the display together. She knows, Rachel said. I picked up the call but didn't say a word. I just waited. A second later, my sister's voice came through the speaker. It was no longer sweet or gloating. It was a trembling, sharp, total panic. What did you do? I stayed completely silent. Her voice escalated into a full-blown scream. What on earth did you do? Orch. The venue called. The caterer called. Everyone is calling. They're saying the payments are frozen. They said you froze them. I let the silence linger for another long second before I finally spoke. My tone was calm, controlled, almost gentle. You took $92,000 from me, Linda. Did you honestly think there wouldn't be any consequences? The line went completely dead quiet. Orch. When Linda spoke again, her tone had shifted entirely. The panic was gone, replaced by a cold, dangerous venom. You have no idea what kind of trouble you just started. Saturday morning sun streamed right through my apartment windows. For a brief, disorienting moment upon waking, I forgot what day it was. Then reality came rushing back like a tidal wave, and I remembered everything. Orch. Today was my sister's wedding day. A wedding that no longer existed. Rachel was asleep in the armchair across from me, her laptop still balanced precariously on her knees. We had both passed out sometime past midnight, entirely too exhausted to even walk over to the bed. I reached for my phone on the coffee table, a knot tightening in my stomach. Orch. 14 missed calls from Linda, 6 missed calls from Mom, and 3 from unknown numbers. Messages were pouring in like a waterfall, each one more frantic than the last. Linda at 2 a.m. Call me back right now. Linda at 3 a.m. I swear to God, Emily, if you don't fix this immediately. Linda at 5:02 a.m. You are making the absolute biggest mistake of your life. Mom at 6 a.m. What did you do? Orch. Call me this instant. I swiped through all of them, letting the read receipts land, but sent 0 replies. Then I put the phone down and walked into the kitchen to start a pot of coffee. It was a gorgeous morning out. Absolute picture-perfect wedding weather, clear blue skies, a mild October breeze, the kind of day photographers pray for. Orch. On the other side of town, 150 people were probably getting dressed in their finest clothes, checking their hair in the mirror, and looking forward to champagne and cake. They had no idea they were about to walk straight into a complete disaster. I pictured the scene over at Magnolia Gardens. Orch. That venue should have been buzzing with life. Setup crews running around, florists arranging centerpieces, caterers prepping appetizers, and the DJ testing the sound system. Instead, the front gates would be locked tight, the parking lot completely empty, and the beautiful grounds dead quiet. Porch. Linda would pull up in her car with her wedding dress hanging in a garment bag, expecting to step into a fairy tale. Instead, she'd find absolutely nothing except an apologetic coordinator bearing terrible news. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from an unknown local Charlotte number. "Miss Carter, this is Patricia from Magnolia Gardens. The bride has arrived and is having a complete breakdown. Porch. She insists this is all a huge misunderstanding. Please advise." I typed out a reply. "There is no misunderstanding. The stop payment order stands firm. Please direct all further inquiries to my attorney." I attached Rachel's contact info, then flipped my phone onto silent mode. Everything that needed to be said had been said. Now, all I had to do was wait. Porch. Rachel woke up around 10 a.m., blinking against the morning light. The moment she saw my face, she sat up straight. "What happened?" "Nothing yet," I said. "But it's coming." By 3:30 p.m., my phone had turned into a running catalog of the fallout. Texts were coming in from mutual friends, distant relatives, and people I barely even knew who had somehow gotten hold of my number. Porch. "Did you hear what happened with Linda's wedding? It's completely canceled. The venue was locked, there was no food, everyone standing around in the parking lot in formal wear with nowhere to go." One of those text messages came with a photo attached. It was a blurry, distant shot of a deeply confused crowd gathered near the main entrance of Magnolia Gardens. Porch. Right in the middle of all those people there was a bright pop of white. It was Linda, still in her everyday clothes, wildly gesturing at someone whose face I couldn't quite see. Then, a text came through that sent a cold shiver straight down my spine. It was from Jason, Linda's fiancé, the guy I had never actually met in person. His message was brief and completely bewildered. Porch. "Are you Emily Carter? I'm Jason Miller, Linda's fiancé. Or at least, I was until this morning. I need to figure out what on earth is going on here. Linda told me you sabotaged the wedding out of pure jealousy. But the math isn't adding up. The vendors keep saying you were the one paying for everything, and that you were the guarantor on every single contract." Porch. But Linda swore up and down that she paid for it out of her own savings. She told me she had $40,000 saved up. I stared at the screen for a long time before typing my reply. Linda didn't have a single dime saved. She's carrying $28,000 in credit card debt, and over the past week, she emptied out $92,000 from my personal bank account to cover this wedding. Porch. "I'm truly sorry you have to find out the truth like this." His response came back instantly. "I think I need to hear the whole story." Before I could reply, my phone started ringing. It wasn't Jason, it was Mom. I let it ring 3 full times, took a deep breath to prepare myself, and answered. "Porch, how could you do something like this to your own sister?" Mom's voice came through sharp enough to cut right through me. "On her wedding day, Emily. On her absolute dream wedding day." I did my best to keep my voice completely level. "Did Linda bother telling you what she actually did? Did she mention that she took $92,000 straight out of my account?" Porch. Mom didn't even pause to digest it. "That is strictly between the two of you. You don't go ruining her wedding over money." "Over money?" I repeated. The calm composure I had been clinging to cracking wide open for the very first time. "She took my entire life savings. Everything I've ever worked for. This isn't some petty family argument, Mom. This is a serious crime." Porch. "Family doesn't file criminal charges against family." Mom snapped back harshly. "You fix this right now, Emily. I don't care what it takes. You fix this second." My mind immediately flashed back to all the things I had fixed over the years. All the checks I had written, the losses I had swallowed, and the peace I had kept at my own expense. Porch. I remembered being a 10-year-old girl giving up piano lessons so Linda could take dance. I remembered being 16 and taking the bus while Linda drove around in her second brand new car. I remembered paying for a wedding that wasn't mine, paying for a divorce that wasn't mine, Paying, paying, and paying endlessly. And all the while, everyone kept reminding me that I was the strong one, the one who could take any hit, the one who was always expected to be reasonable. I'm not fixing a single thing, I said clearly. Linda built this disaster all by herself, and she's going to have to face the legal and financial fallout. Then you are no longer my daughter. The line went dead. I carefully set the phone down. My hands were trembling, but it wasn't out of grief. It was a feeling that felt remarkably close to absolute freedom. Across the room, Rachel was watching me closely. Your mom? I nodded slowly. I think I just became an orphan. My phone buzzed again, a strange area code, a number I didn't recognize. Is this Emily, Linda's sister? This is Marcus, her ex-husband. I heard about what happened today. News travels fast in these circles. I wanted to say thank you, but I also wanted to offer you a fair warning. I stared down at the screen. Marcus. The man Linda had completely dismantled with fabrications and false claims. The man who had lost his reputation, his credit score, and half his custody rights to his daughter, simply because he dared to ask where their money was going. His next message popped up. She did the exact same thing to me back then. The exact same playbook. Drained our accounts, blamed me for everything, and painted me as the bad guy. I lost my standing, my credit, and my daily relationship with my daughter. Nobody believed a word I said, and her family certainly didn't. Then another message. She's going to come at you with everything she's got now. Tears, threats, relentless family pressure. She'll try to make you feel like you're the monster in all of this. Do not fall for it. You're not the monster here. She is. I was still processing Marcus's text when a loud banging rattled my door. It wasn't a casual knock, it was a violent assault on the front door, hitting with enough force to shake the frame. Rachel practically leaped out of her seat. Don't open that! But I was already walking toward the peephole. A part of me deep down already knew exactly who I was going to see. There she was, Linda. She was still wearing that wedding dress, though by now it was heavily wrinkled and coated in parking lot dust. Her mascara was completely ruined, washed down her face by tears, and her hair was half unraveled, clinging messily to her cheeks. Her eyes held something beyond simple anger. It was a totally unhinged, out-of-control panic. I opened the door. For a long, heavy moment, we just stood there staring at each other. Two sisters separated by 35 years of a twisted family dynamic, standing on opposite sides of a doorway neither of us truly wanted to cross. Then, Linda's voice came out, raspy, harsh, and barely sounding human. You completely destroyed my life. The words echoed down the hallway of the apartment building. I could see my neighbor's doors crack open, curious eyes peeking out to catch a glimpse of the scene. My sister in her ruined gown, screaming at me as if I were the one who had committed a betrayal. I stood my ground, completely still, looking at this stranger in a white dress. A woman who shared my blood, but had never once shared a single value with me. I spoke, my voice low, steady, and carrying a quiet, firm resolve I didn't even know I possessed. No, Linda. You destroyed your own life. I just stopped paying for your choices. Her face twisted in sheer rage as she took an aggressive step forward, and for the very first time in my 35 years on this earth, I didn't take a step back. Linda stood in my doorway, her gown covered in dirt and deep creases, her makeup streaking dark tracks straight down her face. Behind me, I could hear Rachel moving around, a sharp attorney already holding up her phone, recording every second of this. We were almost certainly going to need proof of whatever was about to happen next. Do you have any idea what you just did? Linda's voice broke violently between a scream and a sob. 150 guests. They all saw it. They all know. Jason's family flew all the way in from Seattle, and his grandmother is 83 years old. Every single person was looking at me like I was some kind of criminal. I stood firm, completely blocking her entry into my apartment. You need to lower your voice. You're disturbing the entire building. My calm composure only seemed to drive her into a deeper rage. her hands clenched into tight fists at her sides, her breathing coming in sharp, heavy gasps. For a split second, I genuinely thought she might try to swing at me. Then, the expression on her face shifted dramatically. Torch. I watched the change happen in real time. The blind anger flickered out as her mind quickly recalculated. She was used to throwing tantrums to get her way, but when that failed, she had an entire toolkit of other tactics ready to go. Her shoulders visibly slumped, her furious glare melting into utter heartbreak. Torch. The tears that had been born of pure rage suddenly morphed into a dramatic, deeply aggrieved sob. How could you do this to me, Emmy? She used the childhood nickname she hadn't uttered in years, her tone dropping into something soft, fragile, and desperate. I'm your sister, your only sister. I know I'm not perfect, and I know I've made mistakes. But I was finally about to be happy. Torch. I was finally building a real family, and you took it all away right at the altar. She reached out to grab my hand, but I took a smooth step backward. Don't you remember how close we used to be? Sharing a room when we were kids, keeping all each other's secrets? What on earth happened to us? I almost burst out laughing right then and there. What happened to us? Torch. 35 years of a one-way street where she took and I sacrificed. But I kept my mouth shut, watching her performance play out and recognizing every single beat of the script she'd been running since childhood. The tears, the nostalgic throwbacks, the emotional guilt-tripping, using family ties. Torch. She had pulled these exact same moves on our parents, on Marcus, and on every single person who had ever tried to hold her accountable. And up until today, it had worked every single time. When she realized I still wasn't budging, the act switched gears again. Linda drew herself up to her full height, wiping her tears away with an overly dramatic gesture, and tried a brand new angle. Torch. After everything I've done for you, she spat out, her voice suddenly laced with self-righteous anger. When Mom and Dad favored you in every single thing, who was the one standing right by your side? When the kids at school picked on you for being boring, who was there to protect you? Who brought you into my social circles when you didn't have a single friend? I made you who you are today, Emily. Torch. And this is how you repay me? The sheer audacity of those fabrications, so entirely disconnected from reality, was almost impressive in its shamelessness. Our parents favoring me? I was the one taking the bus every day while she drove around in a brand new car. Torch. I was the one sleeping in a tiny converted study, eating cheap grocery store cake, and grinding for scholarships because there wasn't a dime left for my college tuition after they funded her lifestyle. But in Linda's version of history, she was the perpetual victim, the one who had made all the sacrifices. Torch. It's not like you were using that money anytime soon anyway. The words tumbled straight out of her mouth before she even had time to catch them. I froze in place. What did you just say? Torch. Linda's eyes darted nervously, realizing she had slipped up, but she immediately leaned right into it. I'm just saying, you don't have a wedding to pay for. You're not buying a house, and you don't have a family of your own. That money was just sitting there doing nothing, and I needed it. I needed it far more than you do. Torch. Rachel's cold, precise voice cut through from behind me. Did you catch all of that? She held up her phone, the screen clearly recording. Linda's face drained of color in an instant. Just then, the elevator down the hall chimed, followed by the heavy sound of approaching footsteps. Footsteps I recognized all too well. My stomach sank into a cold pit before I even saw them. Torch. Mom and Dad came marching down the hallway like a rescue squad, storming a battlefield. They must have driven over the second they got Linda's frantic call. Dad looked completely exhausted and deeply uncomfortable, his default state, while Mom looked like a general ready for combat. Haven't you caused enough damage? Mom's voice echoed down the corridor. Torch. She rushed straight to Linda's side, wrapping a protective arm around her while casting a furious glare in my direction. Look at her. Just look at what you've reduced her to. I stepped back to let them inside the apartment, not because they were welcome, but because my neighbors were still watching the spectacle through their cracked doorways. Whatever was about to happen didn't need an audience. They filed into my living room, establishing what felt like a courtroom trial. Linda collapsed dramatically onto my sofa. Mom sat right beside her, stroking her hair like she was a traumatized toddler. Dad paced anxiously near the window, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. Rachel stood near the entrance, phone still recording, taking everything in with the sharp, calculating eye of an attorney, building a case. "I didn't raise you to turn out like this, Emily," Mom said, her voice dropping into a deep freeze. "Family is everything, everything. No matter what Linda did, you resolve it behind closed doors. You do not publicly humiliate her like this." "Do you have any idea what people out there are saying about us? About our family?" I looked at my mother, a woman who had spent 40 years using me as a buffer to absorb her eldest daughter's mess. I felt something inside me lock into place permanently. "Linda stole $92,000 straight out of my account. This isn't a family miscommunication, Mom. It's grand theft." Dad let out a strange noise, half cough, half whimper. Everyone looked over at him. He stood by the window, his shoulders slumped, looking smaller than I had ever seen him in my life. "Just drop it, Emily," he muttered quietly. "I'll find a way to pay you back." Mom's head snapped toward him. "Richard?" But Dad kept talking, his voice barely above a whisper. "She's right, Diane." Linda took the money. I saw the bank alerts on Emily's account. I helped Emily set up those account alerts years ago, and a copy of them always got routed to my email address too. When those large withdrawals were made, I saw every single one of them. A total suffocating silence fell over the room. "You knew all along?" Mom's voice shifted, her rage turning instantly toward her husband. "You knew about this and didn't tell me?" Dad shrank even further under her glare. "She begged me not to say anything. She promised she'd put the money back right after the wedding. She said everything would be fine." I stared at my father, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. His lifelong silence wasn't just weakness. It was active compliance. He had watched Linda steal my life savings and hadn't said a single word. He had received those fraud alerts, watched my hard-earned money vanish, and chose to shield his golden child instead of protecting his innocent daughter. Exactly like he had done my entire life. Mom turned back to look at me, but the expression on her face had subtly shifted. She was still furious, but now there was something else mixed in, disbelief, maybe even confusion. It was the very first crack in the iron fortress she had built around Linda's worst behavior. Right then, Linda's phone rang, breaking the heavy tension in the room. She answered it and deliberately hit the speakerphone button. A tiny, terrified, confused little voice echoed into the living room. "Mommy, when are you coming home? Why did the party stop? Did I do something wrong?" Lily. Hearing her voice made my heart wrench tightly. Linda's eyes locked onto mine, and even through her fake tears, I could see the cold calculation in her eyes. "No, sweetie," Linda coaxed in a soothing voice. "Mommy's just talking to Auntie Emmy. She made a little mistake, but Mommy's going to fix it." Then, with cruel deliberation, Linda spoke into the phone. "Tell Auntie Emmy you love her, sweetie." Lily's innocent voice filled the room. "I love you, Auntie Emmy. Please don't be mad at Mommy." Linda hung up the call, keeping her eyes glued to mine. "She adores you. Her birthday is next month and she keeps asking if you'll be there." "Are you really going to ruin her mother's life over some money? What kind of an aunt does that make you?" Rachel stepped forward, her voice icy cold. "That is enough. Using your own child as an emotional weapon against your sister is a disgusting new low, even for you." Linda whirled around to glare at her. "Get the hell out of here. This is a private family matter." Rachel didn't back down an inch. "I am Emily's family, the kind that doesn't steal her life savings." I walked over to the front door and threw it wide open. "All of you, get out." Mom started to protest. "Now wait just a minute." I cut her off, turning straight to Linda. "You have 72 hours. Put every single cent back into my account. the full $92,000, and sign a formal legal statement admitting to what you did. You do that, and we keep this private. No police, no courtrooms. If you refuse, I file formal criminal charges against you first thing Monday morning." Mom's voice trembled into a whisper. "You would actually send your own sister to prison?" "Orch." I looked directly at Linda. "She's the one who put herself in this position. I'm just the one taking legal action." They slowly filed out of the apartment. Mom supported Linda as if she were a wounded soldier while Dad shuffled behind them, completely unable to look me in the eye. At the threshold, Linda stopped. She turned back, and the look on her face changed yet again. Orch. The tears were completely gone, replaced by something far colder and far more sinister. She leaned in close, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper meant only for me. "You think you've won? You think freezing my wedding is where this ends?" She let out a cruel chuckle. "I know things about you, Emily. Things that could dismantle your entire career. 72 hours? Fine. Orch. Use that time to think very carefully about who you're crossing." She turned and walked away, dragging her filthy wedding dress along the concrete hallway. I shut the door and leaned heavily against it, suddenly feeling entirely drained. Rachel eyed me carefully. "What did she just say to you?" I closed my eyes. "She threatened to go after my career." Rachel frowned. "With what?" "Orch. You haven't done anything wrong." My stomach churned nervously. There was one thing. 3 years ago at my firm, a minor calculation error nearly cost us a major client. The Morrison account. I caught it early, fixed it completely, and made a full disclosure to my supervisor. No harm was done, and it was treated as a closed chapter. Orch. But Linda was the only person I had ever confided in about that stressful moment. And now she was planning to weaponize my vulnerability against me. Every secret, every moment of weakness, every honest confession I had ever shared with my sister was now being loaded into her gun. Sunday morning arrived under gray, overcast skies that threatened rain. Orch. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, my coffee completely untouched, staring at the clock as Linda's deadline ticked away hour by hour. 64 hours remained on her 72-hour window. In 64 hours, I would either get my money back or press formal criminal charges against my own sister. Deep down, I already knew which outcome was more likely. Orch. Linda's parting threat kept echoing in my mind. Things that could dismantle your entire career. The Morrison account issue had happened 3 years ago, a simple oversight in a client forecasting report. I had caught the discrepancy before it caused any actual loss, and immediately brought it to my manager's attention. He actually commended my honesty and professional ethics. Orch. It wasn't a scandal by any stretch of the imagination, but Linda had a terrifying talent for twisting completely innocent situations into career-ending allegations. If I was going into battle, I needed to know exactly what kind of opponent I was dealing with. What else had Linda done? Who else had she stepped on? How deep did this pattern really go? At 9:15 a.m., my phone rang. Orch. The screen displayed an unfamiliar local Charlotte number. I answered cautiously. "Emily, it's Marcus, Linda's ex-husband." His voice came through clearly. "We texted yesterday, but I feel like I need to tell you the rest. You deserve to know the whole picture." I set my coffee cup down. "I'm listening." His tone was steady, but weighed down by years of accumulated pain. Orch. I met Linda at a friend's party when she was 28. She was charming, beautiful, and made me feel like I was the center of the universe. We were engaged within 4 months and married within 8. I genuinely thought I had found my soulmate. He paused for a moment. The very first red flag was a small withdrawal from our joint account that I never authorized. $2,000 just gone. When I brought it up, she burst into tears, claiming her car needed urgent repairs, and she was too embarrassed to ask me for money. I believed her because I loved her. Then came another withdrawal, and another. Marcus continued. Over 2 years, nearly $40,000 vanished into thin air. Every time he questioned an expense, Linda had a ready-made excuse. An emergency for Lily, unexpected medical bills, or helping out a friend in need. Every single time, she cried, apologized, and swore it would never happen again, until the next time it happened. When I finally put my foot down and insisted we see a financial counselor, her entire demeanor flipped, Marcus said. Suddenly, I wasn't a concerned husband asking about our finances. I was a controlling, financially abusive monster. She started telling friends I monitored her every move, gave her an allowance like a child, and that she was terrified of my temper. I closed my eyes, recognizing the exact same playbook she was trying to use on me. By the time I discovered she had hidden $40,000 in credit card debt and filed for divorce, she was 10 steps ahead of me, Marcus explained. She had spent months laying the groundwork for that story. Her lawyers painted me as an aggressive, manipulative husband. She brought in character witnesses, friends she had been feeding lies to for years. And me? All I had were bank statements. Do you know what the judge saw in that courtroom? A terrified woman and an angry man hurling financial accusations. She had tears. I had Excel spreadsheets. The tears won. His voice cracked slightly. I lost primary custody of Lily, my own daughter. The judge awarded Linda majority custody because she played the helpless victim so convincingly. It took me 3 long years to rebuild my reputation, my credit, and my life, and I still only get to see my daughter on weekends. She took everything from me, Emily, everything. Just because I asked where our money went. I thanked Marcus for his honesty and promised to stay in touch. Then I called Rachel, who connected me with an attorney named Daniel Reeves. Daniel specialized in complex financial fraud and agreed to meet with me at noon. Daniel's office was located in Uptown Charlotte, a sleek modern space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He was a silver-haired man in his late 50s with sharp eyes and a reputation for being absolutely ruthless in the courtroom. Rachel had pulled a personal favor to get him to sit down with us on a Sunday afternoon. I spread my evidence across his conference table. Bank statements, transaction logs, vendor contracts, and the audio recording of Linda's confrontation outside my apartment. Daniel systematically reviewed every single page, taking notes in precise handwriting. When he finally looked up, his expression was deadly serious. "This is a rock-solid grand theft case," he said clearly. "Having account access is never a legal license to drain $92,000. As for the falsified documents, claiming to vendors that you were a guarantor without your consent, that crosses directly into criminal fraud. And the evidence of premeditation is overwhelming." His investigator, Kevin, brought in their preliminary findings. "We pulled the access logs for your savings account," Kevin said, handing a folder to Daniel. Daniel scanned the contents. "Your sister attempted to access that account 5 separate times over the past 2 months. The first 4 attempts failed until she finally got the right credentials. She was actively probing your account security, waiting for the right moment." He looked straight at me. This wasn't an impulsive mistake. This was a calculated operation. The paper trail was equally damning. Daniel's team traced where my $92,000 had gone. $35,000 paid to wedding vendors before the freeze. $28,000 used to clear Linda's personal credit card debt. $15,000 moved into a joint account with Jason. And $14,000 withdrawn in cold, hard cash. "She used your life savings to wipe her personal slate clean," Daniel explained. Clearing her debt, funding a new marriage, and keeping a cash stash for herself. She built a new life using your hard-earned money as the foundation. That afternoon, I met Jason Miller at a small coffee shop in South End. He looked entirely different from his photos. Exhausted, rumpled, with dark circles under his eyes, showing he hadn't slept a wink since the wedding collapsed. We sat in a quiet corner, 2 strangers targeted by the exact same person. "After we spoke yesterday, I checked my own accounts," he said, staring into his untouched coffee. "You were right. There were dozens of small withdrawals over the past month. 200 here, 300 there, always kept just under the alert threshold. It adds up to nearly $4,000. I never even noticed. Orch. He raised his tired eyes to look at me. She told me she had $40,000 saved for the wedding. She told me you two were estranged because you were cruel to her during her divorce. She told me her ex-husband was abusive and that she fled with nothing. Every single word out of her mouth was a complete lie. Orch. I showed him my documentation, the bank statements, the vendor contracts, and the grim pattern revealed by the numbers. His face went from pale to flushed and back to pale again as he processed the vast scope of the deception. There's one more thing, Jason said slowly, something that kept bothering me. Orch. The vendors told me you paid for everything as a guarantor, but Linda swore you insisted on doing it. She said it was your way of apologizing for not being there for her during her hardest times. She said you felt guilty for being more successful and wanted to make it right. She made it sound like you practically begged to pay for it. I shook my head firmly. I never offered to pay a dime. Orch. She put my name on those contracts without my knowledge or consent. I was only listed as a guarantor because she needed someone with top-tier credit to sign, and she banked on me never checking the fine print. Jason buried his face in his hands. Who is this woman? He looked up, a fresh wave of panic washing over his features. I have to ask you one last question. Orch. Linda told me you both had an inheritance coming from your late grandmother. $200,000. She said it would clear right after the wedding and be split between you two. She claimed that's why money was tight, because everything was locked up in probate. She used that inheritance to convince me to put my name on a down payment contract for a condo we were buying. Orch. Based on that promise, I put down $30,000 of my own money. I stared at him, stunned by the sheer audacity of her lie. Our grandmother passed away 15 years ago. She left us nothing because she had nothing to leave. There is no inheritance. There never was. All the color completely drained from Jason's face. Orch. I just legally obligated myself to a $30,000 debt based on a complete fantasy. That evening, I set up a conference call with Marcus, Jason, and Daniel. 3 victims harmed by the same woman, finally comparing notes. Orch. Marcus brought his divorce records and custody filings. Jason provided text messages about the fake inheritance and his bank statements. I had the theft records and vendor fraud documentation. Together, it formed a clear picture of systematic financial abuse, spanning years and targeting multiple people. Daniel's assessment was swift and blunt. This isn't an isolated incident anymore. Orch. This is a clear pattern of criminal behavior. A district attorney is going to love this case. Multiple victims, detailed paper trails, and undeniable intent. And right now, with her activities on social media, she's actively digging her own legal grave. I frowned. What social media activity? Daniel passed his phone across the table. Orch. Jason had sent over a screenshot of Linda's Facebook page, posted just 2 hours prior. The photo showed my sister weeping, trying to look bravely composed. The caption made my blood run cold. Some people will go to any length to destroy your happiness. My own sister ruined my wedding day, turned my fiancé against me, and destroyed my future out of pure malice. But I will not be broken. Orch. The truth will come out. Family betrayal, sister from hell, justice for Linda. The comment section was blowing up with hundreds of strangers offering support. Stay strong, Queen. Blood doesn't make people family. Your sister sounds like an absolute monster. Linda hadn't waited for my deadline to expire. Orch. She had launched a preemptive strike, painting herself as the victim before anyone else could speak the truth. The war was now completely public, and I had been firmly cast as the villain. Tuesday morning arrived with a heavy, irreversible weight. The 72-hour deadline I gave Linda had officially passed without a single dollar returned, without a phone call, and without a shred of remorse. Orch. Instead, her social media smear campaign had gathered massive steam overnight. Justice for Linda was trending locally in Charlotte, with hundreds of strangers condemning me based on her carefully spun lies. At 8 a.m., I sat in Daniel Reeves's office, putting my signature on formal legal filings. Porch. Criminal complaints for grand theft, fraud, and unauthorized account access. A civil lawsuit demanding full restitution plus punitive damages. The paperwork felt unnaturally heavy in my hands, far heavier than paper had any right to be. I was officially initiating legal proceedings that could send my own sister to prison. She's not going to pay it back, Daniel noted calmly as I signed. Porch. She's betting on you backing down. This social media campaign proves she thinks this is a court of public opinion, not an actual court of law. He took the signed documents and passed them to his paralegal. She made a massive miscalculation. By 10:30 a.m., the filings were officially registered at the Mecklenburg County Courthouse. Porch. The criminal complaint was submitted, and the civil suit was underway. Linda would be formally served within 24 hours. This private family matter was now an official public record. Standing outside the courthouse, I felt the tremendous weight of the decision I had just made. Rachel stood beside me, a steady, reassuring presence. "You did the right thing?" she insisted softly. Porch. I watched people walking past, ordinary citizens going about their ordinary days, completely unaware that I had just crossed a line from which there was no turning back. Then why do I feel like I just cut off my own arm? Because you did, Rachel replied gently. But that arm was completely toxic, and it was going to destroy the rest of you. Porch. Daniel had advised me to stay away from my parents' house and let the legal system handle things. But I had other plans. If my family was going to take sides, I wanted them to see the entire truth first. They deserved to know exactly who they were protecting. Just past 4 p.m., I pulled up to my parents' home in Matthews. Porch. The traditional single-story house with its manicured lawn and American flag on the porch looked identical to my memories, but everything felt utterly transformed. There were 3 cars in the driveway, Mom's SUV, Dad's truck, and Linda's sedan. Plus a BMW I recognized from photos, Jason's car. Everyone was gathered there, perhaps waiting for news, or perhaps waiting for me. Porch. I gripped my folder of evidence tightly and walked toward the front door. Rachel had offered to come inside with me, but I asked her to wait in the car. This was family business, the ugly kind that had to be confronted behind closed doors. I didn't bother knock. Technically, this was still my childhood home. I turned the knob and stepped straight inside. Porch. The living room looked like a war room in full session. Mom sat on the sofa with her arms crossed, her face tight with suppressed fury. Dad occupied his usual recliner, looking like he wanted to sink into the cushions and vanish. Porch. Linda sat in an armchair like a tragic queen receiving condolences, while Jason stood near the window, keeping a clear distance from everyone with an unreadable look on his face. Over in the corner, Lily was quietly coloring, blissfully unaware of the intense tension thick in the air. The room fell dead silent the moment I walked in. Every single eye turned toward me. Porch. Mom was the first to speak, her voice dripping with venom. "I certainly hope you came here to apologize." I slammed the folder onto the coffee table so hard the wood rattled. "I'm here to lay out the hard truth for you. What you choose to do with it is entirely up to you." Before anyone could interrupt, I opened the folder and spread the contents across the table. Porch. Bank statements, transaction logs, vendor contracts. I walked them through every single piece of evidence in a calm, matter-of-fact tone. Linda took $92,000 from my savings account. She pulled it out in 3 separate chunks over a single week, executing it with cold calculation. I pointed directly at the vendor contracts. Porch. She told every single wedding vendor that I was willingly footing the bill, calling me her secret investor. She lied to them, claiming I was making it up to her because I hadn't supported her through her divorce. She even forged my signature on the guarantee forms, writing my name on the dotted line without my consent. Linda shot out of her chair like she'd been launched from a spring. Porch. You never loved me." Her voice cracked with sudden explosive rage. "You've always been jealous of me. Always. Mom and Dad handed you everything on a silver platter. Your college tuition, your car, your apartment deposit." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "They sent me to a public state school. You went to a private university. You took expensive dance classes. Orch, you got grand birthday parties I never even dreamed of having. And guess what, Linda? Every single cent they spent on me I paid back. Can you say the same?" A deafening silence slammed into the room. Linda's mouth worked, but no sound came out. Mom looked at Dad, while Dad kept his eyes locked firmly on the floor. I pulled out Marcus's file. This isn't even the first time she's done this. Orch. I laid out the old divorce filings, the custody battle records, and a clear, undeniable pattern of financial abuse. She did the exact same thing to her first husband, $40,000. When he confronted her about it, she accused him of financial abuse. He lost his reputation. He lost custody of Lily. He lost everything just for asking where their money went. Orch. Dad suddenly stood up, his face flushed deep red. "Stop talking! Just stop talking!" Everyone froze. My father hadn't raised his voice once in 40 years. I had never heard him yell, but right now he was shouting, "Linda, I'm done. I am not covering for you anymore." All the color drained right out of Linda's face. "Dad!" "What are you talking about?" Orch. 3 years ago, Dad's voice trembled. "You needed seed money for a business venture. You took $50,000 from my retirement account. I gave it to you because you swore you'd lose everything if I didn't help. You told me you'd be living on the streets, and you made sure I knew I'd never see Lily again. But you never paid back a single dime." Orch. Mom's transformation happened in a split second. The fury on her face locked onto a new target, shifting like a heat-seeking missile straight toward her husband. "Richard! What are you talking about? You went behind my back and pulled 50 grand out of our retirement fund?" Dad shrank back under her glare. "She begged me, Diane. She told me she'd be on the streets, that I'd never see Lily again." Orch. He suddenly looked ancient and shattered. "That money was our safety net, I knew it. I just didn't know how to tell you." Mom turned her gaze toward Linda. For the first time in my life, I saw the look in Mom's eyes change. That automatic reflex, that blind, unconditional protection for her precious golden child, finally cracked. She was finally seeing what I had been forced to look at for years. Orch. Jason walked away from the window. His voice was completely stripped of emotion, flat and hollow. "Linda, we are done." Linda whipped around to face him. "Jason, baby, don't listen to them." "I've seen the evidence," Jason said. "All of it. The fake inheritance, the forged documents, the money you stole out of my account." He shook his head. "There is no wedding. There never will be." Orch. "I've already canceled the apartment purchase, and my lawyer is handling the paperwork. You'll be hearing from him regarding the $30,000 you cost me." Linda's composure shattered completely. "You can't do this. We're supposed to get married. We're supposed to start our lives together." Jason walked toward the front door. "I was supposed to marry a woman who loved me, not a con artist." Orch. He paused right next to me before stepping outside. "I'm sorry I believed her lies about you. Whatever testimony you need me to give in court, I'll be there." Then he walked out, and the door clicked shut behind him with a sound that felt like a permanent finality. Orch. Right in the middle of it all, cutting straight through the deafening arguments, the accusations, and the collapsing alliances, a tiny voice pierced the chaos. "Mommy," everyone froze. Lily stood right in the doorway of the hallway, her coloring book slipping from her fingers as tears tracked everyone fighting. "Mommy, did I do something wrong? Is it because of the wedding?" Orch. "I'm sorry the wedding got ruined. Please stop fighting." I dropped to my knees, bringing myself right to her eye level as my heart broke in two. "Sweetheart, this is not your fault. None of this is. The grown-ups are just trying to sort some things out. You didn't do anything wrong. Do you understand me? Absolutely nothing." Linda watched me comfort her daughter, and a look flashed across her face. Orch. Maybe it was shame, or maybe it was the sudden realization of what she had become. but it vanished almost instantly. Fine. Linda stood up straight, wiping away her tears, her voice turned glacier cold. You all want to believe I'm the villain. Fine. But I am not going down alone. She turned on me, her eyes venomous. You're going to regret this. George. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who you really are. Your precious career, your spotless reputation. I know about the Morrison account, Emily. I know what you almost pulled, and I have the emails to prove it. She grabbed Lily by the wrist. Let's go, Lily protested, but Linda's grip was like an iron clamp. The door slammed shut behind them with a heavy, echoing thud. George. Linda's threat hung in the air like poison gas. The Morrison account. My only real vulnerability. It was a mistake I had confessed to her years ago during a moment of profound weakness, trusting her simply because she was my sister, and now she claimed she had emails. Whether fabricated or doctored didn't matter. In the hands of someone with an agenda, public perception always beats the truth. George. This war had just escalated to the nuclear level. Wednesday morning started with my phone buzzing frantically on the nightstand. Notifications poured in like a tidal wave, too fast for me to even process. Facebook tags, Instagram mentions, endless text messages from unfamiliar numbers. Rachel was already awake in my living room, her face lit by the eerie blue glow of her laptop screen. George. You need to see this. Linda's public post on Facebook had been shared over 800 times overnight. The photo showed her looking shattered and beautiful, tear tracks on her cheeks, holding a bouquet of withered flowers. The picture of an innocent woman framed and wronged. The caption was a masterclass in emotional manipulation. George. My own sister ruined my wedding, stole my fiancé, and is now trying to throw me in prison. All of this because I reached out to her for help during my darkest hour. Some people just can't stand to see others happy. I refuse to be silenced. Just tell sister family betrayal, justice for Linda. The comment section had turned into an online rally in her defense. George. Hundreds of strangers offering their sympathy and outrage. Stay strong, Queen. Blood doesn't mean family. So sorry you have such a toxic sister. The narrative had already been set, and I was locked in as the villain. As follow-up posts rolled out, Linda's story grew more and more outlandish. In her version, I had been jealous of her looks and success since childhood. George. I had promised to fund her wedding only to pull the funding at the last second out of sheer malice. I had lied to turn Jason against her, and now I was using legal threats to shut down a survivor of domestic abuse. Every single accusation was wilder than the last, and every lie was swallowed whole by people who had never even met either of us. George. The most insidious post of all was a subtle hit piece directed at my career. Some people in the financial world simply cannot be trusted with other people's money. Just saying. Ask about the Morrison account. There were no specific details, but it was enough to plant the seed of doubt, enough to make my colleagues wonder what dark secrets I might be hiding. George. The personal attacks started around 9 in the morning. Acquaintances who saw Linda's posts sent texts asking if I really sabotaged her wedding. Well-meaning friends called to ask what on earth was going on. Strangers who somehow dug up my contact info fired off vicious curses. You're a disgusting piece of garbage. Karma is coming for you. Hope you die alone. George. I scrolled through the comments on Linda's page, looking for familiar names to gauge the damage. Then I saw a name that made my blood run cold. Sandra Whitmore. We had been friends in college. She struggled to find work after graduation, and 2 years ago, I wrote a glowing recommendation letter that landed her a great job at a marketing firm. George. She didn't owe me anything, but I thought we were at least friends. Her comment read, I always knew Emily was cold-hearted. She's calculating and fake. I'm not surprised at all that she pulled this. A woman I had helped, a woman I trusted and vouched for, was now publicly branding me a monster. I could brush off betrayal from strangers, but Sandra's words cut deeper than anything Linda posted. George. At 11 in the morning, my work phone rang. It was my supervisor, Michael Torres. Emily, I received some very troubling news about you. An anonymous email was sent to HR accusing you of financial misconduct, specifically mentioning the Morrison account. I don't believe it's true, but I have to ask, is there anything I should know about? I laid the entire story out for him. The calculation error from 3 years ago, my immediate self-reporting, the clean audit that followed, and the formal confirmation letter my old boss had given me. Michael listened without interrupting once. All right, he said finally. I believe you. I'll handle HR on my end, but keep me in the loop. This could get messy. Rachel had been monitoring Linda's social media all morning. Do not respond, she advised. Do not engage. Let her dig her own grave. Every post she makes is hard evidence of harassment and defamation. Daniel can use all of this in court. Even so, watching Linda poison the well, watching strangers swallow lies about me, and watching my hard-earned reputation crumble in real time was much harder than I expected. She's trying to ruin me before I can ruin her, I said. Then we speed things up, Rachel replied. Early that afternoon, Jason called, his voice tight and humming with suppressed fury. We have a massive problem. Linda is telling everyone that I was in on it too. She's claiming I helped you sabotage the wedding just to steal her money. She's even telling people we're having an affair and planned the whole thing for our own financial gain. This new narrative was even more destructive than the last. Linda had turned me and Jason into co-conspirators, secret lovers who meticulously plotted to humiliate her for personal profit. Both accusations were entirely baseless, but in the digital world, truth never catches up to a well-repeated lie. And Linda was repeating her fiction to anyone willing to listen. Jason's consulting firm operated entirely on reputation, and client trust was everything. 2 clients had already pulled their contracts, and more were calling with awkward questions. She's destroying my livelihood just because I wouldn't marry her, Jason said. I'm filing a defamation lawsuit right now. My lawyer says we can combine our cases to show a clear pattern of malicious behavior. Sue her, I said. The more evidence we have, the better. That afternoon, an email from an unexpected sender landed in my inbox. The sender was Victoria Reyes. The subject line read, I used to work with Linda. You need to know what she did. Victoria had worked with Linda at a marketing firm 4 years ago. They had been friends, or at least Victoria thought they were. I trusted her, she wrote in the email. Linda had access to her desk, her purse, her passwords. Over the span of 3 months, $3,000 vanished from Victoria's checking account. When Victoria confronted Linda, the familiar script played out. Tears, apologies, promises to pay back every cent. Linda claimed she was backed into a corner, going through a difficult divorce, and had a child to support. Sympathetic and exhausted, Victoria agreed to settle it privately. No police involvement, just a signed repayment agreement. She never paid a single dollar back, Victoria wrote. Not one. When I threatened legal action, she turned the tables and accused me of workplace harassment, claiming I was targeting her because she was a single mother. I dropped it. I was too tired to fight and just wanted it to end. Victoria had kept all the receipts. The settlement agreement, bank statements, and screenshots of text messages where Linda admitted to borrowing the money. I've been following your case, she wrote. I saw her posts. She did the exact same thing to me. Exactly the same. I can testify in court. I have the documentation. I've been waiting years for someone to step up and stop her. That evening, Daniel Reeves reviewed Victoria's evidence. We have 4 victims now, he said, spreading the documents across the conference table. You, Marcus, Jason, and Victoria. Every single one of them has written proof, and every single one of them experienced the exact same playbook. He looked at me, a glimmer of satisfaction in his eyes. This isn't just theft anymore. This is serial financial abuse. When the patterns were laid out on paper, their destructive nature became crystal clear. Step 1. Build trust through emotional connection. Step 2. Gain financial access through shared accounts, authorized user stats, or physical proximity. Step 3. Drain funds either gradually or all at once. Step 4. When caught, cry, accuse, and threaten retaliation. Step 5. Rewrite history to cast yourself as the victim. Step 6. Find a new target and repeat. The district attorney is going to love this case, Daniel said. Multiple victims, documented patterns, clear intent. Add in her social media harassment, and she's basically building her own jail cell. Every single post, every lie, every accusation is ironclad evidence. Just past 6 in the evening, Daniel's phone rang. He spoke briefly, then turned to me. That was opposing counsel, Patricia Hawkins. She represents your sister and wants to discuss a settlement. Linda's proposal was entirely predictable. She was willing to pay back $50,000 in installments which wasn't even the full amount. In exchange, I had to drop all charges and sign a non-disclosure agreement barring me from ever speaking about the case publicly. No way, I said, without a single second of hesitation. She stole $92,000. She wants to pay back $50,000 over 5 years, and after spending a week trashing me online, she wants me to sign a gag order? Absolutely not. See you in court. That night, after Daniel went home and Rachel finally fell asleep on the couch, my phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but a strange instinct made me open it. The message contained an attachment, a screenshot of what appeared to be an email I had sent my supervisor 3 years ago. The subject line read, "Clarification on Morrison account discrepancy." But the body text had been altered. Words had been added, twisting the context completely. The email made it look like I had tried to cover up a major mistake rather than self-reporting it immediately. Beneath the screenshot was a single line of text. "Drop the charges, or this email goes to everyone at your company and lands on the desks of local news outlets. You have 48 hours. It was signed with a simple letter L. I stared at the screen. The email was fake. I knew it was fake. But the people receiving it wouldn't know that right away. And in the time it took to prove it was doctored, my career could be thoroughly destroyed. Rachel appeared in the doorway. "What's wrong?" I turned the phone to show her. "She's done negotiating," I said. She wants mutually assured destruction." Monday morning, the stone facade of the Mecklenburg County Courthouse loomed solemn and gray beneath an overcast sky. At 8:15 a.m., I arrived alongside Daniel and Rachel. Media vans clustered outside the courthouse steps. The story of a sister stealing her siblings' life savings had become a sensational local headline. Camera shutters clicked and flashed as we walked up the stone steps. I kept my eyes straight ahead, face blank, even though my heart hammered wildly against my ribs. Daniel had met with Linda's lawyer at 7 in the morning to discuss the proposed plea deal. Now, standing in the hallway outside the courtroom, he turned to me with a grim expression. "She's not taking the plea. She changed her mind this morning. We are going to trial. She claims she has new evidence that proves her innocence." I wasn't even surprised, disappointed but not surprised. Linda always had a backup plan. What kind of evidence? Daniel shook his head. "Her lawyer wouldn't say, but it doesn't matter. The evidence we have is overwhelming. Whatever she's planning, it isn't going to work." "Then let's finish this once and for all," I said. Courtroom 4B was smaller than I pictured. Wood-paneled walls, high ceilings, and an American flag hanging behind the judge's bench. The gallery was already packed with reporters holding notebooks, curious onlookers drawn in by the headlines, and a few familiar faces. Rachel took a seat in the front row of the prosecution's section. Jason Miller sat nearby, ready to take the stand. Marcus Webb was there too, finally stepping into a moment of vindication 3 years after being labeled a liar. Victoria Reyes nervously clutched her handbag, her gaze steady and resolute. Further back, separated by an invisible wall of tension, sat my parents. They sat physically close, but even from across the room, I could see the massive fracture running right down the middle of them. Linda and her attorney, Patricia Hawkins, sat at the defense table. It was the first time I'd seen my sister since she stormed out of our parents' house with Lily. She looked smaller, thinner, paler. The confident golden child, replaced by someone I barely recognized. Yet she was still meticulously groomed, wearing a soft pink blouse and modest jewelry, projecting the picture of a wronged victim. Full performance mode. Her final grand act. All rise! The bailiff's voice cut through the murmurs in the gallery. The Honorable Judge Patricia Lawson presiding. Judge Lawson entered with the weight of absolute authority. In her 60s, with streaks of silver in her hair and reading glasses perched on the bridge of her nose, she was widely known in the legal community for her iron fist rulings and zero tolerance for courtroom theatrics. She sat down, sweeping her sharp gaze across the room without missing a beat. The prosecution may give its opening statement. Daniel stood up and walked toward the bench. Your Honor, this case is about systematic theft, fraud, and betrayal. The defendant, Linda Carter, stole $92,000 from her own sister. She forged documents, deceived vendors, and when caught, attempted extortion using fabricated evidence. This was never a desperate act born of a moment of weakness. It was a crime planned and executed over weeks of deliberate calculation. The evidence will show a pattern of financial predation spanning years and multiple victims. We ask this court to hold the defendant fully accountable under the law. Patricia Hawkins delivered the defense's opening statement with practiced smoothness. Your Honor, my client is not a criminal. She is the victim of a dysfunctional family dynamic. Emily Carter has controlled the family finances for years. She promised to fund her sister's wedding, only to pull support at the 11th hour to punish a perceived slight. What my client did was desperate. Yes, but it was born of betrayal, not greed. The prosecution will show you numbers and paperwork. We will show you context and humanity. My client made mistakes, but she is not the monster they are painting her out to be. Listening to this alternate reality theory from the defense, I felt a familiar heavy pressure. That strange sensation of having my narrative casually rewritten inside Linda's world. I was the controller, the punisher, the villain. It was the exact same script she had spun about Marcus and everyone else who tried to hold her accountable. The prosecution called its first witness, Thomas Reed, a senior fraud investigator at First National Bank. He took the stand carrying a thick stack of documents. He walked the court through the transaction logs. 3 withdrawals over a single week, $30,000, $35,000, $27,000. All unauthorized, all tracked directly to accounts bearing Linda's name. We also reviewed access logs, Reed continued. In the month leading up to the successful breach, the defendant attempted to access Ms. Emily Carter's savings account 5 separate times. The first 4 attempts failed, until the final one succeeded. This wasn't an impulse action. It was a systematic test of security measures. Patricia Hawkins stepped up for cross-examination. Wasn't Linda Carter listed as an authorized user on that account? Reed nodded. She was authorized for emergencies, with verbal restrictions in place. She was never authorized to drain the account dry. But she did have access, Hawkins pressed. Reed's reply was calm and devastating. Having access to a bank vault doesn't mean you're allowed to take the money out of it. The second witness was Dr. Sarah Chen, a forensic handwriting expert. She presented an analysis of the guarantor signatures on the wedding vendor contracts. The signature attributed to Emily Carter does not match her verified samples, Dr. Chen explained, pointing to magnified images on the screen. Stroke patterns, pen pressure, letter construction. All of it indicates forgery. She switched to another exhibit. Furthermore, the email submitted by the defense as evidence of alleged workplace misconduct by Ms. Emily Carter shows clear signs of digital tampering. Metadata timestamps do not match company logs, and the formatting is inconsistent with the employer's mail server. This document is a fake. I looked at Linda's face. When that forged email, her ultimate extortion weapon, was exposed as yet another crime, her composed mask cracked for a split second before she violently forced it back into place, resuming her aggrieved, innocent posture. Marcus Webb took the stand next. He had waited 3 full years for this moment. For 3 years, he had been the bitter, making things up ex-husband in everyone else's eyes. Though emotion flickered in his eyes, his voice remained steady. I was married to Linda for 3 years, he said. During that time, she pulled over $40,000 without my knowledge. When I found out and confronted her, she flipped the script and accused me of financial abuse. I lost my reputation. I lost my credit. And I lost primary custody of my daughter. He looked right at Linda. All of that just because I asked where our money went. Daniel guided him through the details. How did the family court view your claims of missing funds back then? Marcus's jaw tightened. They didn't believe me. Linda cried on the stand, saying I was controlling and that she was afraid of me. The judge saw a scared woman and a man making accusations. I had bank statements. She had tears. The tears won. Victoria Reyes followed right after. Her hands shook slightly, but her voice stayed clear. She described working with Linda, trusting her, and later discovering $3,000 missing from her checking account. When I confronted her, she cried and swore she'd pay me back. She signed a settlement agreement, but she never followed through. When I pushed her for the money, she accused me of workplace harassment. I gave up. I was too tired to fight. 4 victims, same playbook, same psychological manipulation, same outcome. As this serial pattern crystallized in front of the court, Judge Lawson's expression grew heavier and darker. Finally, Linda took the stand in her own defense. Patricia Hawkins walked her through a carefully rehearsed tragic narrative. Emily has always been the successful child, the golden favorite in our parents' eyes. I struggled my whole life while she had everything, Linda sobbed softly. When I got engaged, I turned to her for help. She promised to support me, then pulled all the money at the very last second just to punish me. The tears arrived right on cue. I'm not a thief. I'm just a single mom who made a desperate choice. I was going to pay her back after the wedding. She didn't even give me a chance. She went straight to the police. My own sister, blood of my blood. Daniel stepped up for cross-examination. I watched my sister brace herself for the biggest performance of her life. Miss Carter, you testified that you intended to pay your sister back. With what money? You were carrying $28,000 in credit card debt. Linda hesitated. I would have figured something out. You also told your fiancé you had $40,000 in savings. Was that true? That was a misunderstanding. What about the $200,000 inheritance from your grandmother that you used to convince him to sign a home down payment agreement exclusively with you? All the color drained from Linda's face instantly. I don't know what you're talking about. Your grandmother passed away 15 years ago and left nothing behind. You manufactured an inheritance to manipulate your fiancé. Patricia Hawkins shouted. Objection! Judge Lawson didn't hesitate. Objection overruled. The witness will answer. Linda's rehearsed composure finally suffered a fatal fracture. I just wanted to build a life. Everyone else got help. Why couldn't I? Emily got everything. A career, savings, a future. And I had nothing. I deserved that money. Silence dropped over the courtroom like a lead weight. It was too late when Linda realized what she had slipped and said, not borrowed, not needed out of desperation, deserved. Her core sense of entitlement and greed stood stark naked for everyone in the room to see. Daniel launched his final strike. Ms. Carter, our records show that 2 weeks before the first withdrawal, you searched online for how to access someone's bank account without their knowledge. He projected the search history onto the courtroom's big screen. Does that sound like a desperate act or a premeditated crime? Linda stared at the screen, her mouth opening, closing, and opening again. No more tears. No more performance. Just a woman watching her final lie turn into ash. The witness may step down, Judge Lawson said, her voice entirely flat, though her eyes burned with sharp intent. Court is adjourned for deliberation. Sentencing will be handed down tomorrow morning. When Linda walked past me, our eyes met. There was no hatred in her expression, no anger. Just a heavy resignation. She knew it was over. Orch. She probably always knew that someday someone would stop her. She just never believed anyone would actually have the courage to do it. Tuesday morning arrived carrying the full weight of everything that led to this moment. I sat on the exact same wooden bench in the exact same courtroom. But the energy in the room had shifted overnight. Orch. The gallery was fuller than yesterday. Word had spread, and the back rows were lined with reporters clutching notebooks. Community members who followed the case online were also present to witness the conclusion. This trial of sister against sister had transcended a mere family dispute and turned into a story people desperately needed to see karmic justice finish. I barely slept a wink. Orch. Every possible outcome played on an endless loop inside my head. What if the judge felt sympathetic? What if Linda somehow slipped through the cracks? What if everything I sacrificed, every relationship I broke, every bridge I burned, ended up meaning nothing at all? Rachel sat beside me, placing a hand gently over my arm. Whatever happens, she whispered, you did the right thing. Orch. I wish I could have believed her without a single shred of doubt. Linda sat at the defense table, completely motionless, staring blankly ahead. No performance today, no carefully chosen outfit, designed to project wounded innocence. Just emptiness. She looked like a woman who had already received her death sentence with nowhere left to run. All rise. The bailiff's voice echoed through the room. Orch. Judge Patricia Lawson walked in with the exact same authority as the day before, carrying a single folder. Her face betrayed no emotion whatsoever. Please be seated. I am ready to read my verdict. The entire courtroom held its breath. This court has reviewed all evidence, testimony, and documentation submitted in this matter. Judge Lawson's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Orch. The defendant, Linda Marie Carter, faces charges of grand larceny, fraud, forgery, and unauthorized account access. Furthermore, evidence of attempted extortion has been entered into the record. She paused, looking directly at Linda. The evidence is overwhelming and unambiguous. Orch. The defendant systematically stole $92,000 from her sister via unauthorized withdrawals. She forged documents to deceive vendors. She manufactured a non-existent inheritance to manipulate her fiancé into signing a real estate contract alone. And when faced with the consequences of her actions, she attempted to blackmail the victim with fabricated evidence. Orch. This was never a desperate act of momentary weakness. It is a pattern spanning years, impacting multiple victims, driven by profound entitlement and deceit. Judge Lawson's pen rested firmly on the desk. On the count of grand larceny in the second degree, I find the defendant guilty. On the counts of forgery, fraud, and attempted extortion, I find the defendant guilty. Orch. A collective breath rushed out of the gallery. Linda didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She just stared straight ahead as the cuffs were brought out. The sentence of this court is 10 years in state prison, with no possibility of parole for the first 5 years, alongside full restitution of all funds stolen from all identified victims. Court adjourned. Orch. As the bailiff escorted Linda away, she glanced back one last time. Her eyes met mine through the courtroom crowd. There was no apology in them, no remorse, just the quiet realization that the bill had finally come due. I sat there in the quiet hum of the courtroom as the rows began to empty out. Orch. Rachel squeezed my shoulder, and a long, shuddering breath finally escaped my lungs. A release of tension I hadn't realized I was holding for years. Outside, the gray clouds finally broke, letting a pale shaft of afternoon sunlight spill over the courthouse steps. The media vans were still there, cameras rolling as the final chapter closed. But I didn't hide my face from the lenses anymore. Orch. I walked down those stone steps with my head held high, stepping out into a future no longer defined by someone else's lies, ready to start over with clean hands and a quiet mind. Another pause stretched out, the silence in the courtroom, so heavy you could hear people breathing. On the count of grand larceny, I find the defendant guilty. On the count of fraud, guilty. Forge. On the count of forgery, guilty. On the count of unauthorized account access, guilty. On the count of attempted extortion, guilty. Every single word fell like a sledgehammer. I watched Linda flinch violently with each guilty verdict, all 5 times. Her shoulders collapsed entirely, her head drooping forward until her hair fell across her face like a shield. Forge. A stifled sob escaped her throat, a raw, broken sound. It wasn't the theatrical crying she had weaponized so many times in the past. This was the sound of a human being watching her entire world cave in. Patricia Hawkins was on her feet instantly. Your Honor, we ask for leniency. My client is a single mother raising a young daughter who depends on her. Forge. She has no prior record. This is her first offense. We ask the court to consider probation and community service instead of prison time. The deepest lesson I learned is this: love without respect is worthless. A family without moral boundaries is nothing more than shared DNA, and sometimes, the most painful choice is the right one. I didn't destroy my sister's life. She destroyed it herself. Forge. I simply refuse to let her drag me down into the abyss with her. If you're listening to this story, maybe you see a bit of yourself in it. Maybe there's someone in your life just like that. Forge. Someone who takes and takes and takes. Someone who makes you feel guilty whenever you set a boundary. Someone who calls your self-preservation selfish. Someone who twists every single argument so that it's always your fault. You do not owe them your inner peace. You do not owe anyone unconditional sacrifice. Protecting yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. Forge. And sometimes, survival is the most loving thing you can do for yourself and everyone who truly cares about you. If someone you loved betrayed you this way, what would you do? Would you have the strength to choose justice over guilt? Would you have the courage to choose to save yourself? Thank you for listening to this story with me. Living through it wasn't easy, and telling it wasn't either. Forge. But if even one person hears this and recognizes their own struggle, if even one person finds the courage to set boundaries, protect themselves, and say enough is enough, then every painful moment I went through was worth it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment telling me your story, or simply let me know which city you're listening from. It helps me see how far these stories travel. Forge. If this resonated with you, hit subscribe. We have many more stories to tell, lessons to share, and journeys to walk together. Until next time, please always remember this. You deserve respect. You have every right to set boundaries. No one, not even family, has the right to steal your peace of mind. I'm Emily, and this was my story.